We're going to go ahead and start since it's 5:30. So hello, everyone, and welcome to all of you who are listening to this forum. My name is Nancy Slocum, a member of the League, and I will be the moderator for tonight's League of Women Voters Candidates Forum, featuring the three candidates for the position of PUD Commissioner for District 3. I'd like to thank these three candidates, Phyllis Bernard, Kenneth Riando, and Ken Simpson, for taking their time to participate in our forum this evening. Voting is the cornerstone of our democracy, and I appreciate the time you're taking to listen tonight. There are many volunteers working to keep things running as smoothly as possible, and I'm grateful to all of them. We also want to thank Sarah from the North Olympic Library System. We are recording this forum and we'll be posting links to them on the League's website, www.lwvcla.org, within the next few days. Over the past month, we have received thoughtful questions from the community. So the questions you hear tonight are your questions, and we thank everyone who took the time to submit them. In many cases, multiple people submitted similar questions, and we did our best to combine the questions in a way that allows us to cover as many questions as possible on a wide range of topics in the time we have this evening. Before we began the forum, we made sure that all candidates were able to see our timer, and now we'd like to put that to use. Each candidate will give a 2-minute opening statement in alphabetical order. After that, we will move to the question portion, where each candidate will have 90 seconds to answer, alternating on who will answer first. At the end of the forum, each candidate will give a 2-minute closing statement. We will now hear each candidate's opening statement. Please tell us why you are running for the PUD Commissioner position, what your qualifications are for serving, and what your goals are while in office. So Phyllis Bernard, you will go first, and you'll have 2 minutes.
Unmute. There you are. Good evening. And first of all, thanks so much to the League of Women Voters for sponsoring this. It's important. It's important that people get to see and hear and ask questions and that they be answered. Well, I'm very fortunate to be able to say that I'm not just running for this particular commissioner position. I am the commissioner for District 3, as was decided back in the spring when the three of us each applied to fill the unexpired term of Jim Waddell. And I was the one that was chosen. Why? Because over the course of 40 years, I have dedicated myself to serving the public, and it's been faithful. I have put my constituents, whoever they were, and the requirements of law and ethics ahead of any of my personal interests, whatever they might be. I've been entrusted with serving the public as a commissioner in multiple roles, currently as commissioner for District 3 of the Clallam County PUD, also as the at-large commissioner for Olympic Medical Center, our public hospital district, and earlier in my life as a commissioner on the Oklahoma Merit Protection Commission, where we assured fair treatment for government employees. On the national level, the Reagan administration appointed me to serve on the federal tribunal that oversees the Medicare hospital payment system. The Clinton administration appointed me to serve on the National Rural Advisory Committee, where we helped create telemedicine as we know it today. In terms of the PUD, I bring 16 years of governance experience in bringing green energy to the power grid, not just talking about it. We set up $1 billion energy trading market to reduce the need to build new generation. Bonneville Power Administration asked my organization to set up a market for the Pacific Northwest, and serious conversations are currently underway about which direction to take. We need
Thank you, Ms. Bernard. Your time is up.
Yes.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Mr. Riando, you now have 2 minutes.
Yes, good evening. I'm Kenneth Riando, candidate for PUD Position 3, District 3, and thanks to the League for hosting this event tonight. I was born and raised in Port Angeles along the bluffs overlooking the harbor. And, it was full of industry when I grew up, mills and port docks. It was just full of industry. Following graduation, I was employed at the Crown Zellerback Mill at the west end of the harbor, which is now McKinley. And unfortunately, we just received this notice that the mill might close permanently. So my thoughts are with the employees at the mill. I worked the summer, then went back to the mill for 35 years. And at the mill, that long career involved working around high energy utilities, boilers, fresh water, and wastewater treatment. Uh, it was an interesting place to work. Was very challenging. The shift work was difficult, and I left at 55 years of age because I didn't want to do that anymore. But that the work itself was very interesting, and I find the PUD's work around these various types of equipment also very interesting. We moved to the unincorporated area of Port Angeles West in 1980 and have been PUD customers ever since then, and our service has improved over time. And I hope to work, with the PUD as a commissioner to continue this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rendo. Mr. Simpson, you're next. You have 2 minutes.
Hello, I'm Ken Simpson, and again, thank you to the League of Women Voters. I know you spent a heck of a lot of time soliciting the questions for tonight's event, not only for this race, but for all the others, and appreciate that you put all the effort in that you do every time we have an election. This is my home. Lived here my entire life, other than a few years in the middle of a wheat field going to college. And been involved with my family business for the last 34 years, and we're an electrical contracting company. We work together with the PUD and the city of Port Angeles to make your lights work, whether it's at the paper mill that Ken worked at, or whether it's at your house or your business or the North Olympic Library. I get an opportunity to work alongside the PUD and a lot of their employees, and have a pretty good working knowledge of how things go together. I had a pretty good campaign manager until Sunday last weekend, and that was my dad, Ted Simpson. And he passed peacefully, which was great, but he spent 34 years as a PUD commissioner, and I'm not going to tell you that all that rubbed off on me at all, but I certainly have a lot of knowledge from talking to him, and it benefited me that not only was he my campaign manager, but he was my neighbor for the last year and a half. He lived in the backyard in a place we built for he and my mom. I'm proud of his 34 years of service to the PUD, and I plan on continuing that same great service when you elect me. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Simpson. All right, we're on to our questions now. The first group of questions relate to power service. The first one touches on the scarcity of water, but in relation to our power supply as well. And again, as was mentioned earlier, if you need me to repeat the question before it's your turn to answer it, please don't hesitate to ask me to do that. I'll be happy to do so. So the first question, the consistently below average snowpack is having an impact on the power that BPA can provide. What is your position on power generation on the Olympic Peninsula? Ms. Bernard, you're going to go first. You'll have 90 seconds to answer this question. You need to be sure and unmute.
We'll get faster at finding that button. I promise, Nancy. Actually, this is a problem that's a current issue for us, because as I was observing and participating in the Bonneville Power Administration workshops on negotiating a new rate for us, they are using data that projects the same historical pattern of snowpack that we've had 10 years ago, projecting that forward for another 10 years. And apparently it was news to them when I said that actually this was the highest snowpack that we can expect to have, according to experts, going forward, and that by the time we reach 2040, there will be no snowpack. Our most immediate impact is going to be the increased cost for electricity. And I'm trying to be a part of that process of turning around Bonneville to pay attention to it, because that's why I was voted unanimously to be a commissioner.
Thank you. Mr. Rando, you have now 90 seconds to answer the same question.
So as a lifetime resident, I have watched the mountains consistently to see what their condition is. When I was young, my father and I fished a lot, and the snow melt was important for the condition of the rivers, so we could go fish. But also, I worked at the mill, and a lot of our electricity was supplied by the Elwha dams. And, it was seasonal in the summertime. The river would lower, and generators would be shut down for maintenance. And this is happening earlier and earlier because our snowpack is diminishing. We're losing our glaciers. And so it is important that we transition to other forms of energy. And that is happening. Much of the new generation is different. It is not hydro. A huge component of our electricity in Washington is hydro, but that is going to decline. It is declining because of the water conditions here. We're predicted to, have more rain, less snow, and that means we will have shorter periods of time where we have available water for hydro generation and water systems, for drinking. So we have to make this transition. I've been an advocate. We've installed solar at our house, and I advocate for solar and other sources of energy. So we have to make that transition. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Simpson, you now have 90 seconds.
Could you repeat the question, Nancy?
Sure. The consistently below average snowpack is having an impact on the power that BPA can provide. What is your position on power generation on the Olympic Peninsula?
The power generation part is what's throwing me a bit. We don't generate any power on the Olympic Peninsula, and even solar that people have on their homes doesn't count. We don't count any solar as part of what we use for power for the Clallam County PUD. 86.3% of what we use is hydro that comes from Bonneville, and just shy of 11 is nuclear, and then the rest of the less than 3% comes from other sources that you're familiar with, coal and wind and that kind of thing. But if it's what do we do to generate power, we don't do anything to generate power on the Olympic Peninsula that's meaningful in any way to the grid. So there's a great question, what technology is available out there, maybe in trials. What is it that we can contribute to the grid? Because if we lose the line that goes from Shelton to here, we're cut off. We've got no way to generate power other than a cogen plant at the paper mill in Port Angeles, and that's still not a very meaningful source of power for any significant use. So great question, and lots of opportunity to find some answers. Thank you.
Thank you. So our second question. In the current BPA PUD contract negotiations, what are the main challenges and questions? Mr. Rando, you're going to go first with this question. You have 90 seconds.
I will say that I have not been intimately involved in these conversations. I've listened as a participant in meetings and reports from commissioners. To me, it's still ongoing, and we have professionals that are engaging in these. Phyllis has engaged in some of this, but I've been listening to our superintendents back and forth that he's had with the BPA organization to try and understand the various machinations of what is going in to come up with an ultimate result. Those conversations are ongoing. I don't think they're fully baked about what the decisions are, but I have the impression that rates are going to trend higher And with the changes to the system that are going to be required over time, I see nothing to indicate, BPA is changed and discontinued as reserve clause. So we're kind of getting hung out there a little bit for higher rates. Some of the tiers are being modified that affect our rates. So that's what I know right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Simpson, you now have 90 seconds.
Well, yeah, certainly huge impact on everything do your electrical rates have. And right now, 2028 is the new contract. It's an 18-year deal. And it's pretty dang important that we're doing everything we can to talk about keeping our rates as low as they can be. Right now, the commission has pretty much put staff in charge of debating with or negotiating with Bonneville. Prior to that, we dealt with a company called the Public Power Council, or the PPC, that we were involved with as a member, and they did the negotiating for us, as well as most of the public-owned utilities in our region. Right now, we're negotiating with them directly as some of the bigger utilities, Snohomish PUD, for example. They're huge. We're negotiating directly with Bonneville, and we're this little tiny utility without any representation other than what we're getting from our own staff. And that may be just good enough. We've got some really, really good staff and really smart people working for us. So I'm hoping that they're helping us talk about getting the lowest rates we can get, because like your gas, electricity affects everything. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Bernard, you now have 90 seconds.
Let go. There we go. I agree with you. We have an amazing staff at the PUD. They also appreciate having somebody who's already done this before. As they say, it ain't my first rodeo. And I've already been able to participate in very meaningful ways. For example, pointing out some of the very basic factual errors that they have in the projections for these rates. These rates become everything. I've already been able to participate, and I was asked to continue to participate in looking at the methods for resolving disputes between whatever the model is that BPA comes up with, which is theoretical, and the gaps between that theory and the actual practice, and trying to save us tremendous time and costs and goodwill. The costs are already going to be going up. The BPA had projected that it was going to have $900 million in additional revenue. Well, it's going to end up being a $280 million loss because of drought and extreme weather. BPA had been anticipating that they were going to be able to distribute an additional $95 million. I think that one of the most important things that we can do is to keep BPA focused on its purpose, which is public.
Thank you. This next question is related to those BPA negotiations. With the new contract being negotiated with BPA to be enforced for the next 19 years, will there be a more equitable distribution of cost from the regular users to the heavy electric users? Mr. Simpson, you go first on this one. You have 90 seconds.
Getting back to the staff negotiating with Bonneville directly, we're trying not to be seen as everybody else on I-5. So we're trying to be seen as who we really are, which is, we've got industrial customers that use a whole lot. A couple of paper mills on the peninsula. We've got residential customers. We've got rural customers. We've got customers that for sure would fall under the hardship category, and maybe as Bonneville classifies those people, maybe more than we're being given credit for. So I know staff is working very hard to give Bonneville a clear picture of who Clallam County PUD is, from individuals to corporations, and that we're hoping that they take us away from the I-5 corridor in terms of how they see us as a customer. And I think they're doing a pretty good job so far. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Bernard, you now have 90 seconds.
First, I'm sorry, I need to ask you to repeat the question, Nancy, to make sure I'm clear.
Sure. With the new contract being negotiated with BPA to be enforced for the next 19 years, will there be a more equitable distribution of cost from the regular users to the heavy electric users?
Thank you. This is actually going to be one of the biggest challenges that we face, because increasingly Bonneville is reimagining its role as not simply to serve primarily, first and foremost, and firm public providers of electricity, especially in rural areas. Instead, the system that is in the process of being developed is one that would just make us one of many instead of firm preferred priority customers. And I think that this is going to be our underlying issue as we go along. If there are these projections, as they are, that there's going to be this great need for far more generation, my question is, who is this generation going to serve? Why are we being asked to pay these additional costs? And I wish that it were possible for the Clallam County PUD in and of itself to actually have a meaningful voice. The voice that matters will come from working together with other utilities that have a common cause. And I think it's very important for us to become active, full members again in those organizations that are at the negotiations table. I don't want to just be an observer. We need to have a voice, and we need to have the opportunity to influence others to come join us in the fight.
Thank you. Mr. Riendo, you now have 90 seconds.
I have listened to these conversations from the commissioner reports, and I can only say that the picture seems to be becoming a little more clear as time progresses towards these deadlines around how much of our power is going to be tier 1 versus tier 2 or some other form, and how there might be some form of compensating for certain aspects of weaknesses within our system. It is complicated, and without a background in the electrical field around these negotiations, I'm relying on our superintendent and others who are experts in this field, far more of an expert than I will ever be, to do these negotiations and provide us with the best outcomes. That's what I have to say on this matter. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next question. What is your position on dam removal for survival of salmon? Ms. Bernard, you will go first. You have 90 seconds.
With regard to dam removal for salmon, I think that first of all, we need to make sure we are working with the latest scientific evidence, not science that is 10, 15, and 20 years old, especially with the rapid warming of the planet and the lack of snowpack, already 50% of what is normal. I think that it is important for us to know that we are using the current science looking forward, not a backward trajectory from the past. I also question to what extent do we here on the peninsula need to engage deeply in breaching Snake River dams. We have our own issues here that could really use our time, attention, and goodwill. And while I sympathize, I frankly am most concerned about us here in Clallam County, particularly District 3, my district. I will go wherever the science says we should go. So I simply ask that we revisit those issues. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Rando, you now have 90 seconds.
So I guess I'll focus on the Elwha Dam. That's the one I'm most familiar with. I worked at the mill that was providing electricity from the two dams on the Elwha. They were constructed without fish passage. They had issues with structural integrity and were strengthened over time. Special screens were tried on those dams to try and pass small fish down to see if smolts would survive after spawning. And, siltation issues around these reservoirs were very large. And over time, it was decided that these particular dams were not suitable for the long term, and the process began to remove them. It was a very informative process, and the river is still recovering. And it is a very destructive process to see how the river has changed over time. But the fish seem to be recovering. And as a fisherman from way back, I'm pleased to see this recovery and the ability for these fish to provide for the native peoples that live in that area too. So I think the Elwha situation was beneficial. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Simpson, you now have 90 seconds.
So generally speaking, I'm sure there's a lot more we can do for fish habitat around dams. And as Ken says, we've got kind of a unique opportunity to see how the Elwha recovers and what it takes to make a river recover with regards to fish habitat. And I'm kind of excited to see how well we can get those 100-pound kings back that we've been hearing about for a long, long time. But just in general, I'd like to see us spend more time on figuring out how we can get fish up and down and around our existing dams. And I don't much think I'm in favor of just saying taking out dams just for fish. I think there's other things we can do to mitigate that particular issue that doesn't involve removing dams. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move on to our next question. Please explain why you do or do not support joining the Southwest Power Pool, a nonprofit regional transmission organization. Mr. Rando, you're going to go first here. You have 90 seconds.
So I questioned Commissioner Bernard a little bit about Southwest Power Pool and also the TVA, these large organizations that have so much power, and how they might interact with the BPA, because I guess I'm a bit concerned as a lifetime resident of this area that, we remain a bit autonomous on some of the things that we control and don't get overwhelmed by a very large organization that might decide to use forms of generation that our area might not agree with. So I am a bit leery of linking with a very large organization. This organization came out of Arkansas. I'm a bit familiar with Arkansas and Georgia and some of the generation from a person that built our barn. So we went to visit that area a bit and look around. Some of their values aren't necessarily the values of the Northwest. So I guess I look at them and, they have benefits to bring, but I'm cautious. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Simpson, you're next with 90 seconds.
Okay. And this one's kind of new to me, but I understand Bonneville wants to join with Southwest Public Power Pool, or at least fund them. I'm guessing Phyllis is going to be the knowledgeable one on this particular issue. So I guess I'd like to hear what she's got to say about it.
All right. Well, Ms. Bernard, you have 90 seconds.
Sure, Ken. And the other Ken, hi. Actually, when I served on the board of directors for Southwest Power Pool, that was during the time that BPA approached us to ask us to set up this energy trading market, which is not the same as becoming a member of Southwest Power Pool. Those are two different things. And the idea of trying to remain isolated, the way that this grid operates, frankly, is not sustainable. It's just not the way things work. This is not our parents' electric grid. This is a modern contraption that actually covers Canada and the United States and dips down into Mexico. And in order to assure stability, in order to provide an opportunity for companies to have energy that's less costly than building their own new generation plant, which can't be done for under $1 billion, the market is an option. Southwest Power Pool, I am not wedded to. I am wedded to the idea of the Peninsula being able to have all the options it needs available to it. The members drive what Southwest Power Pool does, and they have a tremendous commitment to green energy. We were leaders in battery storage and solar. Wind is half or more of the load on a regular basis. And I'll stop. I saw the red sign.
Well, thank you. You moderated yourself. Thank you. All right, the next question. Discuss the current security of the grid and power stations. What plans do you have to increase resilience and security? Mr. Simpson, you'll go first with this one. You have 90 seconds.
Well, that's way out of my pay grade or anybody else at Clallam County PUDs. I think if you're talking cyber type work, if there's anything going on within the local PUD, I'm sure not aware of it. I'm guessing there's some talks between our IT guys and our substation guys with some of the Bonneville people and other utilities in similar situations. But boy, I've got nothing for you on security. I know you can
All right, Ms. Bernard.
You put a fence up and they'll still get through and try and steal your wire.
Except you can do what Bonneville started doing, that is stamping the copper wire so that it is not so easily sold on the black market. That has helped. Yes, for 16 years when I served on the board of directors for Southwest Power Pool, part of my duties included cybersecurity and general compliance with all of the voluminous regulations that are brought to us from the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission and from NERC. There is good stuff already happening. We are already doing it. I've been so impressed by what PUD has managed to do so that there is an opportunity for us to avail ourselves of modern technology and communications and still remain secure. What is it that a commissioner can do? To be aware, to be supportive, to make sure that our staff, that our workers out in the field have everything that they need in order to keep us secure. The other part is recognizing that actually when you go into those DHS studies and briefings on the root cause analyses of so many things that were cybersecurity issues, it comes down to a personnel issue. Oftentimes, it's the disgruntled employee who decided to take a shotgun and shoot up a substation or something like that. I don't see us being willing to invest the money to solidify and fortify every substation, but I'm an HR person who really concerns about staff. And I think to the extent I can influence on that, it will help.
Thank you. Mr. Rando, you have 90 seconds.
So this is an uncomfortable subject, but I will say this, that I hesitate to discuss the security issues around this in public very much. We had our own issues at the mill. We have substations and high voltage electricity that were accessible. I mean, it's tough to not make things accessible. And with our modern society, the risks from other types of attacks. So they're out there, and we have to be aware of this and make provisions. But there are limitations to what we can realistically do. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next question is, what is your position on county growth management considering finite water and power availability? Ms. Bernard, you're going to go first with 90 seconds.
Thank you for that important question. Every time that I see new housing developments going up, my first question, coming from a place that was the Dust Bowl originally, is where are you getting your water? Who are you getting your water from? Who do you need to share the water with? Because after all, this resource belongs to everyone. It seems as if supposedly the plans were done in a way that is appropriate. Again, though, I question with the rapid change that we have seen with the water decreasing and the temperatures increasing, are those plans still viable? I question whether we have engaged in sufficient opportunities to listen to what neighbors have to say about water utilization and availability. I question whether the plans that had already been set are really the plans that we need going forward. Because again, things have changed. They've changed dramatically, and we may need to adjust. I'm not saying what has to be done. I'm just saying that it might be a time for us to take a breath and make sure that we are on the path going forward that we want to be on and that we get there together.
Thank you. Mr. Riendeau, you now have 90 seconds.
So I'm a member of the County Planning Commission for District 3, and the comprehensive plan for the county has to be completed by the end of next year. So a big part of that discussion is going to be water, I'm sure. We've had a small system default out at Bowman Beach and went back to the county, so the county's managing that small water system. The county and the PUD have recently had a discussion with ecology around water for Carlsberg. So these conversations are going on around all the water systems. We're going to have these large developments, relatively large, in Carlsberg and Sequim. Currently, there are water rights available. That might change, because it seems like we're having a surge again for housing. Fortunately, it's in the east end of the county where they do have infrastructure, water infrastructure and sewer infrastructure. So water is going to become more difficult to acquire and keep with our declining water resources in the high country. But at this point, right now, we have resources to accommodate some growth, but in the future, it might become more difficult. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Simpson, you now have 90 seconds.
Well, from the PUD perspective, it's sort of a field of dreams thing. If you build it, we're going to come and we'll find a way to get you power and get you water. And yeah, water's probably more interesting than power. Whether we're buying somebody's rights, the utilities obviously taking over or has taken over several private water systems and made them public utility water systems, and they'll likely continue to do that. Yeah, interesting where we get to go from here. But as far as I'm concerned, if you build it, we'll find a way to get you power and we'll find a way to get you water. And that's the job of the Clallam County PUD. Thank you.
Thank you. So that question touched on the issue of water a little bit, and our next few questions all relate to that issue. We had lots of questions on the issue of a sustainable water supply and the conservation measures taken to ensure this sustainability here in Clallam County. The first question is a pretty general one. What water conservation actions should the PUD take and/or promote? And what is your plan to ensure a sustainable water supply for the county? Mr. Riendeau, you're first with this one. You have 90 seconds.
Well, listening to what Mr. Simpson had to say, the PUD is a supplier of water, but ecology is the manager. They're going to and have allowed water usage. They've implemented the wire in the Sequim Dungeness area that has limited drastically new water uses, mostly to indoor use only and not outdoor. So ecology is, I think, from what I heard at the combined county and PUD meeting recently, hesitant to put out more water rights until the current water rights are more fully used. Saying that, many small water systems around the area have older operators, so there's concern that those systems could also default and go back to currently would be the county for operations. And so water, it's going to be just very problematic going forward with our declining resources. I see nothing forecast that says we're going to have more water, we're going to have less. And so that is going to have to be dealt with. It's just going to be very difficult. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Simpson. You now have 90 seconds.
Well, with regards to restrictions, I guess, obviously they vary from system to system, whether they're PUD run systems or private run systems. And most of those wells pump into a reservoir, and they've got a pretty fair idea how much they're able to produce versus how much their usage is. So each individual system seems to be able to restrict their own usage. And yeah, there's a couple of the township line Deer Park area is a kind of a problem and has been for a long, long time in terms of running short on water during the dry summers. Yeah, just with regards to restricting water, you do it when you have to. And that's about it.
Thank you. Ms. Bernard, you now have 90 seconds.
Sure. On this, I especially want to compliment our PUD engineers, because they are folks who remember that being an engineer is about ingenuity. They are creative, they are open, they already have been working on options that I actually wish the public knew more about, which is a part of what I think is one of the most important things for us to do going forward as the PUD. And that is to enhance our outreach to the community so that they know what we're working on and can also offer us some more suggestions. We have a huge variation in topography, and when we look at the West End in particular, there's a tendency perhaps for people to think, oh my gosh, we're a temperate rainforest, there's no water problem. But the thing is, we need to create catchment areas so that we have that water that comes during the heavy rains or during storm runoff, so that it's still available at other times of the year. And our marvelous guys at PUD are already working on things like that. I have a lot of confidence that we can go forward, and that especially as we engage more directly with the community around us and take their ideas in, will be great.
Thank you. Our next question. What climate change impacts do you foresee for our area's water supply? And in addition to climate change, what do you see as other possible future challenges for procuring water supply for Clallam County? Mr. Simpson, you'll go first. You have 90 seconds.
Well, I guess we're back to the, snowpack, and we don't get it in the mountains. It doesn't stick around till summer. I just don't know what to say about that, how we contribute to climate change as it relates to our water, other than like Phyllis mentioned, storage, just making sure that we've got it stored up. If we can't count on it being there all year long, then you capture it when you can.
Thank you. Ms. Bernard, you now have 90 seconds.
Please repeat the question so I'm not answering the same thing over again. I want to be clear.
Sure. What climate change impacts do you foresee for our area's water supply? And in addition to climate change, what do you see as other possible future challenges for procuring water supply for Clallam County?
Okay, having been a farmer, I really have to speak up for the agricultural sector because it has seemed to me as if this is a component that has been left out of so many analyses, including especially the memorandum of understanding that was recently entered into by the federal government. The statistics that were used cut by nearly 90% the agricultural impact of what would happen if the dams are breached. I think we here need to be sitting down with the people who are farming, who are ranching, who are creating the food that we need to understand what is irrigation going to look like during times of scarcity. What are we actually able to do? What are the needs for everybody? And perhaps I'm biased. It just seems as if that's a sector that has been routinely muted, at least in terms of having a voice. And I want to make sure that voice is there fully. I also want to make sure that as we are going forward, we are paying attention to the cost of assuring that we have these resources, that we are able to make up the deficits. The costs are going to be high, and we need to be able to share them in an equitable manner. Um, we may end up having to build the plane as we're flying, but it has been done in the past, and we can do it again.
Thank you. Mr. Rando, you now have 90 seconds.
So first of all, I guess we'd have to get an agreement that climate change is real. As again, a lifetime resident here, a long dry spell in the summer when I was growing up might have been 20 days. Now it could be 60 or 70 days of really warm, dry weather. And we have a temperate climate here, but that's changing. You know, we didn't have good weather until June something, and now in April we get 80 degrees days. That's going to make a dramatic change. Fortunately, I live in an area that Lake Crescent is our reservoir. You know, I feel very fortunate because of the fact it has a huge capacity to retain water. If we don't have snow in the mountains, then we only get rain, which going forward is a possibility before too long. Water and climate change, you know, high temperatures. We didn't need air conditioning in this area. Now people do. We're going to build an off-channel reservoir down off the Dungeness River someday for, you know, $40 million maybe. It's getting tougher to find those resources. So we'll have to do what we can to conserve and change our system to survive. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next question. There are many interests in water consumption that seem at first glance to be competitors: fish habitat, forest harvesting, farmland, housing developments. What are some ideas you have for helping these various interests work together? And are these interests of equal value? Ms. Bernard, you have 90 seconds to answer.
Much of my professional life has been spent not only as an attorney, not only as an adjudicator, but as a mediator and conciliation specialist who has entered into conflict zones, and I mean guns, that conflicted zones, to help people to find common ground so they can move forward. I think that one of the most important things behind any of this is for us to stop being trapped by partisan talking points. We need to be able to move forward. I am an independent. I want us to be able to have those conversations about what kind of future do we want our children to have? What do we want our children's children to have? For us to start with those as the foundation and build out from there. We have found, whether in the United States or in conflict zones around the world, that when we start with people's families and what we see and care about most, it enables us to be able to find solutions that are not in the same box that we've been trapped in for so many years. So it's really an attitudinal change. that I think is most important for all of us in order to be able to take advantage of any of these technologies.
Thank you. Mr. Rando, you're next with 90 seconds.
I'll ask you to restate the question, please.
Sure. There are many interests in water consumption that seem at first glance to be competitors: fish habitat, forest harvesting, farmland, and housing developments. What are some ideas you have for helping these various interests work together? And are these interests of equal value?
I won't comment on the value so much as say that much of the water is used in agricultural uses and less so for direct people consumption. We're going to have to make these decisions. Some of those decisions are being made. Water rights exist for the older users, and right now they're in place. So there are people that can use huge amounts of water to water a field or, water their livestock. There are places that this is changing because it has to. And we are probably going to become one of those places. We're used to having unlimited water here, frankly. I can remember in Port Angeles where I grew up, the sprinkler was on all the time in the summer, to keep the grass green and that kind of thing. That's not going to happen, because we're going to have declining resources and we have more users. Look, frankly, we just have more users that want water. We're not going to have enough. We've got to make some decisions. Decisions are being made. They're not like the east end of the county. There are many people that aren't happy. They fought with ecology and lost around water consumption. So, we'll have to do what we can to make what we have work. And that's where I'm at. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Simpson, you're next with 90 seconds.
Well, it's kind of back to kindergarten rules where you work and play well with others. And if you can't, you go take a nap until you can. So we're all going to have to work together and prioritize together what those needs are and who gets what first and who gets what second. But we do have water storage now. We know we can build water storage later. We know that the lake behind every dam is water storage, whether we use it for energy or irrigation. We have a pretty good system with Bonneville set up the way it is as far as the hydro goes. Like I say, both with regards to irrigation and power generation. And I think we just got to continue to work together to manage that in ways that make sense. And for me, it's got to make sense. Thank you.
Thank you. This next question has two parts to it. What are your views on the Dungeness Water Bank project and what solutions do you propose? And are you in support of the off-channel reservoir planned for SQUIM? Why or why not? Mr. Rando, you're going to go first with this one. You have 90 seconds.
I'll speak to the reservoir. This project has been developing over the years, and we just had a very serious discussion on Monday again, presentation by the engineering firm to show various proposals that could be constructed. It's an expensive project. It will store many millions of gallons of water, primarily used for irrigation purposes, but frankly, a reservoir is a reservoir. If water's needed for people, it's going to be used for people. So that's the way I see it. And its location, it connects with existing irrigation. It's close to the river. There are faults in the area, but a portion of the property, because it's large enough, is still being able to be used. So it's in a safer location on the property. An old dump gets cleaned up along the way. So if you swim ahead, that's good. I hope, I visited my brother's California home, and we looked at the reservoirs down there some years ago and watched how low they were and how terrible the water quality is. But again, we come from an unlimited water area that's changing, and we'll make the changes we have to exist. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Simpson, you're next with 90 seconds.
Well, it's all the great part of being the evergreen state. We've been blessed with a fair amount of water. And if storage makes sense for covering our behind, then I think it's a great plan. And like Ken says, there's a lot of other benefits to having that reservoir than just having it for irrigation. So I guess I would be in favor of the reservoir. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Bernard, you now have 90 seconds.
Sure. Thank you for that question. It gives me an opportunity to thank all the people who spent so much time and energy, who took the chance to be candid in helping to develop these plans. As I have reviewed them, they seem to be the product of a great heartfelt effort to make the future work while recognizing the problems that we are facing and that they are immediate and they are significant. I would support that. And whenever I say something like that, though, I also leave open. And I always realize that when you do these things, what you plan and what ends up happening are not necessarily the same thing. So I'm a very strong proponent of close monitoring, of repeatedly checking back, including to make sure that the cost benefit analyses work out the way that they were expected to originally. Doesn't necessarily always happen that way. I came from a place that used to be the Dust Bowl. I came to a place here that was my version of paradise. I do not want to see the peninsula end up more like Oklahoma than the Evergreen State. And sadly, we're on that way unless we take initiatives like this.
Thank you. Our next question is the last question of the evening before your closing statements. What are the problematic impacts of additional aquifer development? What are the potential impacts between the adjacent aquifers over time? Mr. Simpson, you're first with 90 seconds.
Problems is that if you draw them down to nothing, they aren't any good to you. So good question, but certainly we got to keep an eye on where our water levels are at and where we're going after it, and how we decide to harvest that water, I guess. But water seems to be a big issue and a big concern, and I'm confident that I'll have some better answers for you the next time we get together. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Bernard, you now have 90 seconds.
Coming from a place where we were not able to provide well water for the house and for our livestock at the same time. These are questions that really, really matter. Aquifers oftentimes are not recharging, or they do not recharge in sufficient time. And so actually the United States has lost millions of acres to this problem just within the last decade or so. Don't want that to happen here. Wells need to be spaced so that they are not impinging upon each other. That may also mean that it's necessary to do some conciliation work between neighbors so that people understand that this isn't a matter of you're stealing from me and you're taking from the other guy. We are all in this together, for better or worse, and I want to make sure that it's for better. That's one of my principal goals as a PUD commissioner. My mediation skills are part of the things that were cited in the resolution by the Board of Commissioners to approve me as the commissioner for District 3. And I ask your vote to keep me in that position for the next 6 years. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Mr. Riando, you have 90 seconds now to answer that question.
So aquifers, the ones in Carlsberg, for example, they're having issues with nitrate contamination in some of the shallower aquifers. And so a deep well collaboration between the county and the PUD was put forward, and they drilled the well, and then the ability to blend water to not only preserve some of the other aquifers, but to provide a cleaner water source for the users in that area. Aquifers are problematic. They're the last resource. I guess you keep hoping that you can drill deeper and find that deeper water. My uncle did that there east of Squim. He was up on a hill above Kitchen Dick, and he had a 160-foot well that would get pretty low in the summertime. So he just drilled another well, 200 some feet, and got more water. But at some point you run out of places to drill. You've got enough people, users, that it's not sufficient, as occurred in many other areas. So we've got to be very careful about these aquifer resources and not overuse them, because let's say it is the last water that's available. Thank you.
Thank you. So it's now time for closing statements, which we'll do in reverse order from the opening statements. So we will start with Mr. Simpson. You'll each get 2 minutes for this as well. So Mr. Simpson, you now have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Nancy. Just can't say enough how good a staff the Clallam County PUD has. And I mean, from you see them as linemen, but the staff they have in admin, just really impressive. Those guys are all way smarter than me. I can guarantee you that. But I'm here to tell you that they're a well-run organization, and they don't need a lot. They just need some support. They sure don't need somebody standing out in front of them, waving their arms and slowing them down. Like I say, I'm always impressed. I'll tell you, have the opportunity to be a reference for some people that are either current employees of the PUD or didn't quite make it. Totally impressed with HR, and that's where it begins, and that's where all those great people came from. Been involved with some other organizations and was not very impressed with HR, and just saying. But I really truly believe in the Clallam County PUD and the job that they do. Our job as commissioners is to listen to them, and is to listen to the ratepayers, or we call the customers, and to make sure that we're doing everything we can to support both of them and to provide reliable, cost-effective energy for our customers. And along with that goes water and broadband. Again, definitely don't know all that's going on, but I sure can catch up quick. And this is my first foray into public service. I'm no stranger to service. Been serving alongside some really great people in our community in a number of different ways since I was in high school. And I promise you that if you elect me as your commissioner, I'm going to continue to do the same. And if I don't, then you're probably going to beat me up in the grocery store. So you can count on me doing a good job for you. And I thank you very much. Goodbye.
Thank you. Mr. Riendo, you now have 2 minutes.
Yes, it's been very interesting to interact with the PUD over time. I would praise them. Our service, our electrical service, which is all we have, is improved dramatically over time. The 40+ years that we've been using PUD, electricity cost has gone up. Everything's gone up, but they're a highly awarded organization with very competent people that work there and do this. And I hope to be elected so that I can work more closely with them to help them have the resources necessary to do their business. And the PUD just recently underwent a state audit for financial reasons and had a clean audit, and were praised, for the way they did their business. So everything that I see looks good. The water system struggles in the west end, Column Bay CQ area. They had a landslide that, pushed a water line out of the ground, severed it. They got that back together in short order, and they're working with WSDOT to formulate a plan to get that back in the ground. It's still has a temporary line for 3,000 feet or so along the highway out there. And, Mr. Kendrick, the water manager, is working on that. It just seems that the PUD is looking at their system and analyzing it for areas that can be improved. And this is an ongoing process, to replace old poles with the newer glass type poles and other types of equipment, replacement. So thank you. And I hope to receive your vote.
Thank you. Ms. Bernard, you now have 2 minutes.
Thank you very much for the time and for this evening and for all the people who are listening in. I hope you vote. Hope you vote for me. But in the meantime, I did want to point out that, yes, indeed, we have an outstanding operations at the PUD. But the role of the commissioner is not operations. The role of the commissioner is strategic planning and long-term vision. Our job as a leader is to help lead through change. And indeed, this is a time of a paradigm shift where all the things that we thought we knew are not necessarily so anymore. I have a track record of decades of experience in leading large organizations in turbulent times, in helping to reach out to the communities so that we can get through these changes together. That's one of the reasons that one of my first suggestions was for us to reactivate the idea of the Community Advisory Board, which actually had been a pre-COVID idea that unfortunately, well, as we know with so many things during COVID, it kind of got left by the wayside. We need to pick that up. We need to go back to much more proactive, getting out there into the community, hands-on kind of engagement with all of our customers, because changes need to be understood in order for people to understand what's happening with their bill and for us to get feedback on how we can do all of these things better. It is a big world out there. This is not our parents' electric power grid. This is not our parents' water supply. And our parents never had broadband. But I have experience at helping to bring us through these intact and probably stronger than ever before. And I want to put those skills and that heart to service for my chosen home. I wasn't blessed to be born here, but my husband and I moved heaven and earth to be here, and I'm here for you.
Thank you. So thank you everyone for listening to this focused policy discussion tonight. And thank you candidates for your thoughtful answers and for showing up tonight. These candidates have taken the bold act of running, and now it's our turn to do the voting. If you're not yet registered to vote, we encourage you to go to votewa.gov and get yourself registered either online or by mail through July 29th or in person at your county courthouse until August 6th. If you're not sure about your voter registration status, you can also check that at votewa.gov website. If you want more information on the candidates, we encourage you to visit vote411.org to read the candidates' written responses to a variety of questions. Ballots will be mailed out July 17th and can be mailed in or placed in one of the many drop boxes throughout the county. Election day is August 6th, so please be sure to fill out your ballot and get it either in a drop box or in the mail. I'm asking everyone to vote, then talk to everyone you know about voting as well. Make sure everyone has a plan to get their ballot in. This forum has been recorded and a link to it will be placed on the website for the League of Women Voters, Clallam County, in a few days. Once we have it posted, be sure to spread the word among your friends who were unable to join us live so that everyone can be an informed voter. Thank you again to our candidates for participating in tonight's forum. Good evening, everyone. That concludes our forum. Thank you.